I will start with introducing myself. My name is Scott Peluso. I am the Executive Vice President of Cloud Services and Marketing here at Interloc. So, welcome to Interloc's um, webinar on mobility. Um, very pleased to have Aaron Hermes, Interloc's Vice President of Development, um, who will be walking you through this session today. Aaron has many years of experience um, with managing projects in development teams, procurement on the federal side, Maximo, uh, and is really plugged into mobility, obviously. Um, this presentation will cover, um, what do you want to look at, things you need to consider when when you're looking at selecting the right mobility solution. Um, we will also certainly have a portion of the session dedicated to the Interloc solution, no pun intended, uh, called Mobile Informer. And then we should have time, hopefully, for some Q&A at the end of the session. So we are now 4 minutes in, and I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Aaron. Aaron, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So, as Scott mentioned, I am Aaron Hermes. I am Vice President here of Mobile Development, Product Development, which here pretty much means mobility for the moment. I do want to cover a bunch of ground today, but I also want to make sure that this is useful and helpful to people. So feel free to drop questions in the chat. I probably won't be able to keep up with them, but I will go back and look as we get towards the end, or if somebody on the Interloc side wants to interrupt me and feed them to me. I guess, Scott, that probably means you. So as Scott mentioned, I've got more than 25 years now of experience in software development and IT, spanning a wide range of things, but a lot of focus on initially web application development and then mobile application development for the last number of years here at Interloc. But my background has a lot of weird twists and turns in it when you get down to it. Interloc Solutions, for anybody not familiar, we are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year, founded in 2005. We are 100% Maximo focused, and that is really central to our identity. It's also very critical to the evolution and really even the existence of Mobile Informer in the first place. It was built by Maximo people for Maximo users, and not just a mobile application developer looking for somewhere new to hunt. So our Maximo focus does include Maximo hosting. We've got cloud services, including infrastructure managed services, application managed services, and then obviously our mobility solution. We are an IBM Platinum partner, and we're headquartered in the US. I'm in the Seattle office right now, in fact. But we've got consultants and employees of all sorts scattered through North America. And then outside of North America, we work with a collection of resellers and partners to sell Mobile Informer worldwide. So obviously, if you're here, you've got some degree of interest in a mobile solution, or maybe in replacing a previously attempted mobile solution, or it's your first shot and you're just trying to learn as much as you can. So I do want to cover some of the philosophical underpinnings of why it is we do things the way we do them. Mobility really at its core is simple. All you have to do is get the right product, get it implemented correctly, and then keep it running. Unfortunately, simple doesn't mean easy necessarily. Finding the right product is probably the trickiest and most important part, but it definitely pays the most benefits when you nail it. And then getting a trusted partner can be critical to success. And so I guess one of the things I want to point out as part of this is, although Interloc obviously would love to sell you Mobile Informer and sell you Maximo services, that's not really the point of this conversation today. This is how do you get from where you are to where you want to be, and then getting somebody to walk that road with you is a pretty critical thing. If it's us, that's great. If it's not, there's a lot of other good partners out there who can do good things. In fact, based on the sign-up sheet, it looks like we've got some of them joining this call. So welcome, partners, competitors, co-opetition people, frenemies, whatever. Happy to have you here. And I will say that as a result, we may be a little cagey about some stuff on here. And if you want to dive deeper, we'll be happy to talk to you in a less public place about some of these things. So Anyway, the critical thing about getting a good partner is make sure that they do more asking than telling in the early stages and are really focused on getting you what you need rather than what it is they're trying to sell you. So when you choose the right product, and I realize this is a reference that may not land for anybody outside the US or anybody under, I don't know, 40, 42. But the short answer really is it fit for purpose? If it's fit for purpose, you're going to do okay. There's no simple answer to what is the right product, but it doesn't mean that it's a complicated question. You can break it down into some pretty manageable chunks that help you focus on the right things. And that's why asking the right questions makes it more likely that you get the right answers. If you don't know what you're looking for, you won't know how to find it. It seems sort of self-evident. And like they said on different strokes, what might be right for you might not be right for some. So while it is important to go around and solicit feedback and references and ask for experience from other organizations, understand that just because it's a good fit for somebody else doesn't mean it's well suited for the way you intend to use it. And knowing that going in can help you focus on understanding what it is that you need to be asking about specifically. Some of the right questions, this isn't by any means all of them, but why are you trying to mobilize? What's your motivation? Is it paperwork reduction? Are you trying to go green and you don't want paperwork orders flying around? That is a noble and understandable and valid goal. It doesn't lead you much in the way of a right choice, but it's an important thing to keep in mind. So, basically any mobile solution will help you reduce paperwork. That's true. Now, if your goal is to, reduce downtime on a failure or improve fixed at first contact or whatever, then you may need to get more specific about what it is that you're looking at in the solution. Does it work where you need it to work? If you're largely offline, will it work there? If you're in a hole and wearing gloves, can you operate the mobile tablet? Is it going to work with the gloves on? Those types of things have to be part of what it is that you're trying to do. But then also make sure that you keep those front and center as you evaluate these different things. What are you mobilizing? Is it just going to be work orders? Are you just going to do inspections on the mobile device? Are you just going to focus on storeroom management? It seems sort of obvious, but if you don't need something to be mobile, then you don't need to include it in part of your consideration. And in that regard, something that's got a whole bunch of features that you don't necessarily care about might not weigh in its favor if it doesn't do the one thing that you really need well. So something that does 10 things well enough and you only need one of them might not be as well suited to you as a thing that does one thing really, really well if it happens to be the one thing that you need. And again, I like to say mobility isn't an answer, it's a method. So I do have conversations from time to time with people who say we're hoping to go mobile. And I say, why? And they basically explain, well, because it's 2025 and everybody has a phone. And that's fine. You will get a mobile solution, but I don't think you'll find a lot of satisfaction in where you get because your motivation is just a binary yes, no. Are we mobile? Yes, yes, we are. Good, we succeeded. Rather, if you said we're hoping to, cut our inspection times down or reduce the amount of time traveling between sites because we can dispatch people while they're in the field, whatever those motivations are, again, they really have to factor into your decision making there. Who are you going to mobilize? Not everybody is equally suited to mobility. Somebody who's sitting at a desk most of the day probably doesn't need a mobile solution, whereas somebody who's in a truck or in the field all of the time almost certainly does. So by understanding which users are more likely to benefit from mobility, by understanding how it is that they're going to use it and what types of things they're going to be doing, you can narrow down what it is that you need that solution to do to just the people that are going to be using it, not everybody that might interact. That brings to mind an important concept that we use a lot as we work through Mobile Informer, which is the idea of mobile relevance. Maximo and Maz have just so much that they can do. So many features, so many functions, a lot of which, even in the best case scenario, go unused by the vast majority of customers or users. But even beyond that, a lot of the things that are there that do get used, you don't need all of it on a mobile device. And so mobile relevance is the idea that we need to focus on the things that are usable on the mobile device and necessary. I like to say it's things that are either used for display or calculation on the device, and we can ignore the rest of it. And that has two really big impacts. Number one, it reduces the amount of data that we have to bring over and the amount of the number of features that we have to present to the user because we're just focused on the mobile relevant thing. But the other benefit of that is that by excluding a lot from the mobile device, it makes it a lot more resilient as you make changes to Maximo. If the change itself doesn't impact something that's been determined to be mobile relevant, then you can make that change in Maximo without it impacting your mobile user community. And that's something that we see a lot during the evaluation phases of procurements where people are evaluating options. A lot of times we get questions around, how easily can I make changes to this application or to this layout? Can I add a field and remove a field? I think based on our experience, a lot of times those questions feel very important upfront because you anticipate that you're going to be making all these changes, on a sort of relentless tempo forever and always. But the reality is, a lot of times, if you get the right questions answered, you're emphasizing the right personas and roles, you're focused on the right users, you're understanding where they're going to use this tool and how they're going to use it, and you can strip it down to those things that are only mobile relevant. The number of changes that you actually have to make to your configuration once you're up and running should be pretty minimal. And if it's not, it probably means that you missed something along the way. That doesn't mean that it won't evolve over time or that you won't have new requirements emerge, new use cases introduced, or new user populations brought in. But it does mean that, if you build it right, it should be pretty stable for a while until there's a concerted, deliberate effort to make some sort of change for, hopefully very good reasons. And then where, this one seems obvious, but it sometimes is the last thing you consider because a lot of times you're sitting in a conference room when you're looking at these things, or you're sitting at your desk, and the reality is you're going to be out in the field using this. You'll be standing on the top of a pole or down in a hole somewhere, maybe in the bright sun, maybe where it's very, very cold. We've got customers in Antarctica that it's pretty chilly there. They need to make sure that they can work with gloves on and that they can see the screen with the glare off the snow, that type of stuff. Those usability concerns really do factor in heavily to the ultimate success of the product, but they're things that are easy to overlook, especially if you're comparing a lot of products, because you don't necessarily single out that where am I going to use it point as a standalone, and it really does deserve its own consideration there. So if I want to boil it down, how do we succeed in choosing a mobile solution? How do we get successful mobility, and how do we gauge that it's been successful in the first place? Well, above all else, prioritize user experience. We call it UX. The term's going to come back in just a little bit. User experience is a very big category of things, but it has everything to do with, how many screens you have to click through to get from point A to point B. What's the layout of the screen? How much do I have to scroll up and down? What are the colors? What are the fonts? I mean, there's visual components to it, but then there's also the idea of, how is this information structured so that I get through it and take my user journey through this application in a way that is satisfying and simplified. Those types of considerations have a tremendous impact on user adoption. And really, user adoption is the most significant barometer of your success with your implementation. If users like to use the tool, if they willingly pick it up and go with it, you've done a good job. We hear way too many horror stories about customers who have tried a mobile solution or explored the possibilities in front of them, and users just don't like it. Users are mysteriously losing devices, or devices are getting damaged with alarming frequency, just because there's no value to the user in that solution. If it's something that they embrace, something that makes their life easier, something that simplifies their daily routine, they're more likely to appreciate it and work with it willingly, and you'll see that user adoption that really forms the basis of everything you thought you would get from mobility. But it doesn't happen if the users don't use it. Most failed implementations really are not the fault of the solution. I like to say there's very few bad solutions out there, but there are many that are the wrong fit for any given customer. I used to say that there are basically no bad solutions out there. I want to amend that and say that there are no bad solutions that last for any length of time. I will say that, over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, we've noticed at some of the bigger shows that we go to that every now and then there's a new vendor that we've never heard of. We have no awareness of who they are, where they came from. They've got a pretty website, but no apparent engagement with the community. And then, you never see them again. So there are people who are trying to get into the space because they see a lot of opportunity, particularly people who have maybe solutions for other CMMSs or EAM systems. And now with the rise of a number of cloud-based solutions that are out there, subscription SaaS EAM systems, there's a lot of opportunity to put mobility against those. What I will say is that in those cases, those solutions that aren't really built for Maximo, they're just mobile solutions that happen to work with Maximo. They generally won't deliver as much as a Maximo tailored product like Mobile Informer and several others out there. So, like I said, I used to say there's really no bad solutions, but there are some bad solutions. Unfortunately, the market sort of seems to take care of them and they go away rather quickly. And the big blue elephant in the room, right? I feel obligated to point out, as I mentioned, we are a IBM Platinum partner. IBM, of course, has its own mobile solution, Maximo Mobile. We do support that. We implement it. We can deliver it as part of a MAS implementation or upgrade. That is going to be the way this works forever and always because of the close integration with Maximo Mobile and the MAS suite. With that said, it is an evolving product. It's much better now than it was a year ago. And I have every confidence that a year from now, it'll be better than it is now. As it evolves, it's going to take on different forms and introduce new features. I will say we are not in a feature for feature shootout with Maximo Mobile or really with any other mobile product out there. We're focused on building something that suits our users and fits our philosophy on this rather than saying, well, if Maximo Mobile introduces this feature, we have to get there and have it. I don't think it's any secret that there are a number of features that get added to MAS or Maximo over the years that then sort of either get rolled into another part of the product or sometimes deprecated entirely. So we don't want to try chasing things until we understand that they're usable and useful for people. And again, back to that idea of mobile relevance, not everything that they put in MAS is necessarily going to matter or be useful to a mobile user. So with that said, that is a product that we understand, we support, and frankly, it has a place even within our part of the world. It is going to be good enough for a lot of people, and that's great, and those people should probably look at using it. But Mobile Informer is primarily intended to go beyond those requirements. When there's something that Maximo Mobile doesn't do well enough, or even in some cases at all, that's where Mobile Informer really is meant to step in. And so we can actually encourage mixed deployments of Maximo Mobile and Mobile Informer in the same environment. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, either or. It can be side by side and based on the use case and the user population that it's serving. So that is, I don't know how realistic I guess that is for other products out there. So that's something to consider, is you don't necessarily need to commit fully to one product or the other. If it makes sense to use one product for some people and another for others, that's great. Obviously, Maximo Mobile has the advantage of no additional license cost, beyond the app points that it consumes. With that, caveat that if it's free but it doesn't work, it's not really a value anyway. So it's all about finding the right fit. And like I said, fit for purpose. We'll talk about the four pillars. That sort of explains where we see the dividing line in a lot of ways between what Maximo Mobile can do and what we can do, or where we're more useful or less useful. So that'll come up soon. So now the brief history of Mobile Informer. It was originally released in 2010, which is an awful long time ago, especially when you're talking about mobile solutions. If you consider the iPhone just came out in 2007, so this was a pretty new thing at the time. Obviously, mobility had been around before that with Trios and Palm Pilots and things like that. So there was some concept of working outside the office with some sort of technological aid, but really the birth of the smartphone and the iPhone in particular really drove that to a whole new level. At the time, we were being asked by customers to implement other mobility solutions. And at the time, that generally meant what we now refer to as a MEAP, or a mobile enterprise application platform, which is a generic mobilization tool where you sort of plug in a back-end system and you present components on the mobile device, and then there's an intermediary interface that goes and sends the stuff off to the back-end system, and then it sends back responses. But it's not very tightly integrated by any means. It's a pretty sloppy, generic fit. And as a result, there were a lot of problems, particularly around data integrity problems, transactions not fully being processed successfully, or data getting dropped along the way. Some of that was a product of the mobile infrastructure at the time. Obviously, we've got a lot more towers and a lot more power and reach than we had in 2010 at this point. But some of it was just bad technology that hadn't really matured yet. So we focused on the main problems that we were seeing on the time at the time, which was that data integrity and then the transition between online and offline use. Even today, there's a lot of solutions that require a user to sort of deliberately put themselves into online mode or offline mode, rejoin the server, resynchronize, whatever the term they use is. We felt that that was pretty intrusive and not conducive to getting people through their day. So we spent a lot of time figuring out how to make it happen automatically in the background, and preserve that data integrity as transitioning between online and offline. So if somebody goes offline all of a sudden without any expected deviation from the network, that things still just work and plug right along as if they were online the whole time. Initially, Mobile Informal really was just meant to be like a bucket of Lego that we could go and build mobile solutions with. The expectation was at the time, a customer would come to us and say, I need this very specific thing for this very specific use case. And we would have the tools in that bucket to go ahead and build that thing up for them from scratch in a sort of non-repeatable way, and something that was going to be entirely bespoke. That was very successful. It laid the groundwork for what the product has become now, but it had some very significant challenges associated with it. Most significantly, the fact that it was very difficult to demo a product that didn't exist yet to somebody. So we had to ask a lot of our early customers to take it on faith that we could build the thing we said we were going to build, and then deliver it, a couple months later. So that led us from the Lego era, as I call it, to the Mr. Potato Head era. I don't know why I'm so motivated to use toys as metaphor here, and I apologize for anybody outside the U.S. who may not be familiar with Mr. Potato Head. But the jingle for Mr. Potato Head promised Mr. Potato Head and his bucket of parts. And as you can see here, he's sort of modular. You can take off his arms, and there's another set of hands in the bucket, or another set of ears, or another set of eyes. So the core of the product, the core of the Mr. Potato Head, remains the same, but you just swap out pieces as you need them. So you get a different effect every time, but at its core, it's still the same. And as an aside, the original Mr. Potato Head was not made of plastic. You just bought the parts, and you went to the grocery store and you bought a potato and you put them all in there, which I just think is bizarre. But now it's all plastic. And now I think it's just called Potato Head. I think they removed any Mr. or Mrs., but that's neither here nor there. So the idea was, we've got this central potato, effectively. We called it a framework application that was meant to meet the most typical way most users did the most typical things. So there was an understanding going in that it wasn't going to be everything to everyone, but it would be a lot of the way to what a lot of people wanted, and we would just swap out the ears and swap out the eyes and build them the semi-custom version of the application to do what they needed to do. At the time, we were focused on persona-driven applications. The idea that somebody who was doing inventory management would not likely also be doing work order management or work execution or asset management or inspections. So we built separate apps that were very streamlined, narrowly focused, and provided a very usable interface for those users focused on those things. We've evolved a little bit on that. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the tricky part about the potato head model was that, although we could apply the Pareto principle to it and say it's 80% the same and 20% different for each one, so it's that 80-20 classic split, that 20% could be very different from customer to customer. So although most of the product would remain the same most of the time, we had the flexibility to change any part of it to be anything at any point. We just couldn't really always anticipate where that would come. But with time and with iterations of delivery and with practice, we began to say, if they want to change the eyes out, they probably want, one of these three varieties there. And so we start to build those pieces in as configuration elements that don't now have to be redeveloped every time. They can just be chosen based on that. And getting that fit is really important, but also having the flexibility to change wherever we need to and not just within a rigid structure of sort of where we think you should change things, opens up a world of possibilities for pretty complex deployments where needed. So like I said, over time with repeated delivery and conversation with customers, as well as conversations with people who didn't end up becoming customers for various reasons, we learned a lot about what people like in the market, what they don't, what they like in their hand and what they don't. First and foremost, users hate waiting for things. So they don't want to sit and watch a loading wheel spin for a long time while something happens in the background. They want to just get on with their day. They want to go through and finish the work that they're working on, and not sit watching that thing go. It's got to work. That seems obvious, but it doesn't mean it's not important. Every time they go to that device, they need to know that it'll work, whether they're online or offline, whether they're in a tree or in a garage or wherever. It's just got to work. If it doesn't work, it doesn't take long before they begin not to trust the application, and they try to find other ways to do stuff. Too many clicks. That's one we hear a lot. In various forms. The reality is, people want to get through their work quickly, and if you have to keep clicking your way through a whole bunch of different screens or to navigate through different parts of the application, that's a real buzzkill. So we need to make sure that it doesn't require a million clicks to get something done. And then it must improve and not complicate the user's workday. So we do see feedback from customers that says, now I've got 20 minutes extra on my day because I don't have to drive back to the shop and drop off my work orders or hand jam them when they're there. Those types of things go a long way to encouraging user adoption and are really important. But on the flip side of that, if it doesn't improve their day, if it's easier to do it the old-fashioned way, they will. I say a lot of times in demos and conversations that our biggest competitors are not the other third-party mobile solutions out there. It's really a pen, paper, and a clipboard. And if it's easier for a user to pick up a pen and paper and jot down notes that they'll transcribe or enter later, that's what they'll do. So we have to be easier and better than that. And again, deliver benefit to the user, not just to management, not just to the bottom line. It's got to be something that user feels like their life got easier because of this mobile tool that they're using now. And then the reality is, we introduced Mobile Informer in 2010, 15 years of mobile devices and mobile technology and everything that goes with that. Digital natives, which is the term that I guess marketers use for people that have come of age in sort of the smartphone era and the generally online tech aware population, they've got different expectations from prior generations. We know that they can pick up a device and use it with a lot more self-guided discovery of the application rather than a formal training course there. So as that workforce as that population has come into the workforce, the things that they can do with mobile, the things they expect mobile to do for them, have changed a lot from what they were when we introduced this. And so that has focused our thinking on the things that we say are the guiding principles for Mobile Informer, our non-negotiables, the 4 pillars. Offline first. It must be usable and reliable offline and seamlessly transition to online without user intervention. So that user doesn't have to worry about whether they're connected or not. It just happens. They go out about their business. It has to scale to handle lots and lots of data and lots of users without unduly sacrificing performance. Our biggest deployment, about 6,500 users in New York City. They've got a ton of properties that they manage and millions of records in there that they carry around on their device. So any engineer can go to any location and do any sort of work on any given time without having to plan ahead because it scales to support that. That's really important. We have customers who have millions and millions of records and spare parts, millions of assets in operation. All of that needs to fit in order to be useful to them. So that's a very important piece of this. It needs to be secure. That seems like a given, but it's not necessarily, because security means a lot of different things to different people. So not only does that mean that we need to be encrypted between the server and the device and encrypted at rest on both ends and all of that, but maybe we need to accommodate single sign-on or smart cards like PIV and CAC, multi-factor authentication, those types of things. We need to be flexible enough to accommodate any novel scheme that we encounter there, because different customers have invented new ways of doing things. And as they evolve, we need to be able to keep up with that. And then finally, it needs to be customizable, or a word that I'm trying to lean into now is extensible. We're not really talking about, although we can build entirely custom applications that do a very specific thing for a very specific customer or use case. It also, we need to be able to change any part of the application to behave the way that they need it to, particularly where we're looking at organizations with long-standing Maximo implementations that have now come over to MAS. We need to be able to preserve the processes that they've been using and the way that they've been working for, in some cases, decades. They really should not have to change the way they work because of the tool that they're using. Now, if they want to change the way that they work because they recognize that they need to evolve, we can support that too, but we're never going to tell them you just can't do it that way, especially if they've been doing it that way for a long time. It doesn't always mean it's a good idea to do it that way, but we can support it if they need it. And then so we focus on what I call flexibility by design. I like to say Mobile Informer is built to be bent. We're not talking brute force where we're taking a hammer to this thing and trying to submit it to our will. Maximum mobility is not one size fits all. Different use cases might need different approaches. We have done several significant implementations so far where different user populations get different UIs presented to them so that they see what they need to see with the way they're accustomed to working, but it all feeds to a common backend Maximo that standardizes everything. That can be really useful in integrating new organizations or bringing disparate Maximo implementations together. There's a lot of value there, but understanding that even within an organization, not everybody necessarily works the same way. It's helpful to be able to deliver that to them in a way that that pushes them forward. The tools, as I said, should align to the process, not the other way around. So again, we shouldn't have to tell you, I'm sorry, you have to change the way you work because we can't support that. We need to be able to bring that tool into alignment with the process to keep them moving. Deep customizability yields more resilient and reliable apps. By deep customizability, I mean that we're not just changing the layout of the screen. We've got a developer going in and updating the code in a very predictable, testable, and repeatable way. I know customizability is sort of a four-letter word, as they say, when people really say they want configurability. But I would compare this to, turning your car into a convertible. So you can certainly cut off the roof of your car and put a convertible roof on it and build that out that way, and now you've got a convertible, but it's never going to work as well as something that came from the factory as a convertible. So while configurable solutions have their place, and there's absolutely, again, the right fit for some people someplace, if you really need the resilience that comes with a properly built application from the factory, that extensibility and customizability really does weigh in your favor, and it tends to yield better performance and overall better stability than the aftermarket approach. So Mobile Informer, as I've mentioned before, is designed specifically to deliver mobility without compromise. We're supposed to go the places that other products can't or won't, and particularly as it pertains to IBM's Maximo Mobile, we're looking to go where people have run up against limitations there in a way that they need more, and the product's just not really intended to go there with them. In that case, that's where we shine. So what is the UX suite? That's what you're here for anyway. And all of this, I think, fits together to explain why it is what it is. It's our next generation mobile informer app. UX, as I mentioned earlier, is user experience, and it covers a lot of ground. The name UX suite is meant to emphasize the focus that we've put into the user experience of this application and the usability of it to make it a big leap forward from what Mobile Informer was in the past. It is a reinvention of the Mobile Informer applications, but the server component's relatively unchanged. So the Mobile Informer server really is the meat of the whole thing. It's what does a lot of the data management, the preparation and synchronization of data, as well as ensuring that things are processed successfully and all the data integrity stuff that we talked about. All of that is really at the heart of the server. For anyone who's not familiar, that Mobile Informer server component installs inside of Maximo or MAS. It is not a separate software solution. It doesn't live in the cloud. It lives wherever your Maximo is, and we work directly inside of Maximo natively. It is a Maximo application. It's administered through the Maximo administration module, and what all that means is that we're not bringing in a new system to try to get something talking to Maximo. We don't have security risks that go along with bringing new hardware and new software into an environment. If you're up and running on Maximo, we can get Mobile Informer server running there. And for anybody subject to security evaluations or ATO processing or things like that in the government, it's generally very, very straightforward because it is effectively a Maximo component rather than an external system that we're asking to introduce. So although the server is basically unchanged, everything about the app has changed. We've shifted from that siloed persona-driven model to an all-in-one app. I'll tell you honestly that we resisted that for a long, long time because we couldn't find a way to do it that was not burdensome for the user. The more things you put into the application, the more they have to wade through, the more they have to deal with. And frankly, in some cases, the less of it is relevant to them because they only use one small corner of the application. So we spent a lot of time and energy thinking about how do we meet both goals simultaneously to get away from that siloed multi-app approach while not just, basically recreating the problem we were looking to solve in the first place. And it launched last month. We do expect a new release this month, kind of cleaning up a few things that we've learned since we since we've launched it. But next year, we'll be looking at quarterly releases that include all sorts of things that we'll talk about to some degree as we go. How is it different than Legacy Informer? Well, it's an entirely new technology stack. Anybody who's familiar with Legacy Informer knows we used to deliver 3 separate applications for each of the mobile platforms, iOS, Android, and Windows. This is a Flutter-based solution using the Dart language that is cross-platform, but it is native. It is not a hybrid web app or a containerized app like a lot of the other products, including Maximo Mobile. So that native character to it provides a lot of performance benefits as well as integration benefits and the ability to work with operating system components and things like that. That's a different conversation for a different audience, but it is important that this is native for each of those, even though it's a single code base. And we really focused on making it more modular, so even more potato heady, really Mr. Potato Head on steroids, because we recognize that as we go forward, we're going to be introducing new features, some of which are going to be drawn directly from MAS, some of which are going to be more Mobile Informer specific, and we want to make sure that those are manageable and also make it possible to introduce them to existing users as we introduce them, rather than previously with the way the old application was built. If we added a new feature, you almost had to go through a re-implementation to get that added to your existing product, and that was a major pain point, and something we wanted to make sure that we work our way out of with this. So why are we doing this now? Cross-platform tools are finally sufficiently mature for us. Well, I know, and it's no secret, that a lot of our competitors have been cross-platform for some time, but they've taken a different approach. They're not, they're just a different approach. It doesn't really matter. We were focused on preserving the 4 pillars while sustaining our performance targets. And we are also waiting to see basically who emerged as that cross-platform solution of choice that was going to be sustainable and supportable for a long time. We feel like we found it, and so we were able to move forward. Also, with the move to MAS, it gave us a chance to reset and say, now we don't need to support the legacy platforms in Maximo that we used to. We can focus on building something that was targeted specifically at MAS and later. The consequences of trying to keep 15, 20 years worth of Maximo valid in there, it meant that we had to keep some stuff around that we really would have rather ditched a long time ago because they created headaches. And this gave us a chance to wipe the slate clean, build it smarter based on what we've learned in 15 years of mobility and what we've learned from working with other customers and what we've learned from where IBM is going to go with the product. So that was a clear breaking point for us that we were able to say, now we can do it because of this. Part of me wishes we'd gotten here sooner, but part of me is glad that we were able to take advantage of that when we got there. And then, of course, the question that always comes along, what if I already have Informer? What if, we've invested heavily, we have a product, but we'd like to move to UX Suite. Unfortunately, currently, there's no planned direct upgrade path from Legacy Informer to UX Suite, and we can get into the technical how and why of that. But long story short, they're built so differently that it's not just a translation. It really is a complete reorganization of how things work on a technical level. We are continuing to look at solutions that might enable us to simplify or at least reduce the level of effort to re-implement from existing to UX Suite, but we don't have something that's satisfactory yet. But that doesn't mean we won't, but we do want to keep trying. And then the good news is, I guess, a lot of things that previously were customizations, specific features that were added over time at the request of customers or based on a commonality of requests between customers have now been included in the core product. So just because you had something customized on your existing legacy Maximo implementation doesn't mean it would have to be a customization here. That would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. One thing that should have made this slide but didn't, we are not planning end of life for any of the current legacy Informer products now. So we're not going to squeeze you into a scenario where you have to move or let it die. That obviously is subject to change if there's some sort of major shifting of the ground beneath us in terms of what it takes to sustain those products. But for the time being and for the foreseeable future, we will continue to support any legacy implementation, and we retain the staff to do that work. The people that built them for you are still here. So this isn't we're not sunsetting that product and asking you to make the move. We recognize that there's a lot of investment there, and we want to preserve that investment for you and help make the most of that as we go. So with all that said, and that was a lot said, let's take a quick peek at UX Suite. I say a quick peek. The reality is a proper demo, a full demo is beyond the scope of what we could do for this, and even more importantly, the best demos are going to be tailored to what it is that you need to see the way you need to see it. So I do want to give you a taste of what this looks like. I'm going to stop sharing PowerPoint and start sharing my device. But this is intended to be a look at it that hopefully says, oh, I really want to take a deeper dive. Let's schedule a demo. So coming out of this, if you want a demo to really work through this and see what else it can do, I'd be thrilled to set that up with you. Because, back to the topic of, good fit, the best solution for you is going to be one that fits your needs. And everybody on this call have different needs right now, and trying to demo specifically to a generic use case may not work so well. All right, so I'm hoping you can see my tablet at this point. We will open the UX suite. I can log in with biometrics. And for anybody who's ever seen Mobile Informer, I think you will recognize that this looks nothing like Mobile Informer has ever looked. These are, in essence, replacements for the existing framework applications. These are intended to be basically one for one with the way that they worked when we started this product. I say that because we are enhancing them as we go. Not only that, but we will be adding more modules here. Particularly, we've got a customer now, for instance, who has a very, very unique use case that is being built out, and they will get a new module. So they'll have 4 on this that'll include their sort of private, weird one-off thing as a standalone. And that modularity that we talked about, that Mr. Potato Head concept, really plays out well here. So as we add new features, again, some of which will be drawn from MAS capabilities, and some of which are going to be more about just things that we've decided might be useful as a module level, those will show up here. But working within these, you can see with work orders, I can look and see all my work orders that are assigned to me, the various status that they're in. I can, hopefully this works. I haven't used this on Zoom, but hopefully you can see my mouse. Oh, that didn't work at all like I expected. Normally we use Teams, and I'm much more familiar with how that handles the screen share. So I won't use my mouse because it looks like that made things not work. So apologies. Can somebody confirm that you can see my tablet again? Anyone?
We can.
Okay, good. All right. So within this, we've got the ability to search. One of the things about the search that's pretty common these days is it's not a enter your search term and press go or hit enter. You just kind of type, and as you go, it'll filter. But one thing that's not common about searches is we've got this nifty little lock, the padlock up there. We call it a search lock. And basically, you can see once I do that, it'll lock that search term, even a partial search term there. And I can go and then search within those results and get a smaller result set. So I can search based on any of the things in this card, the asset number, the work order number, the location, et cetera, and then just refine this. One of the things that is coming in the near future will be the ability to save these customized searches and reapply them at the future. So if you want to build a couple searches for the types of things that you need to do, it'll be there. But this sort of stacked search or search lock makes it really easy to get down to very granular bits of information very quickly, rather than having to constantly scroll through a whole lot of stuff there. Because I'm not at home where I normally do these things, I don't have barcodes with me, but we do have the ability here next to the padlock. I can search by barcode, and that includes QR codes or standard barcodes there. I'm going to do something kind of weird, and I'm actually going to log out real quick because this is a usability thing that we are pretty proud of, and I want to show it, but you have to be logged out to use it for right now. So when we get into the server settings here, one of the things that we're really focused on with UX Suite is improving collaboration, making it easier to work together, and that's going to show up in a lot of different ways as we go along. One of the earliest is the ability here to just grab the settings of a given device and share them to somebody who's adding a device to the thing. As you can see, there's a lot of different things that we have to set up with the configuring the host and the authentication settings and those types of things. Rather than having to input all that by hand, whatever, I can just share this QR code to my colleague. They can scan it and it'll automatically configure UX Suite to go. That sort of thinking is really central to where we're taking the product. We really want to make it easier to work as teams, to spend less time trying to find information and more time just getting things done. To that end, we do have some pretty interesting troubleshooting bits in here. The ability to test that the app is successfully reaching the server and check that the server itself is ready to do what it needs to do. Those types of things. Again, lessons learned over 15 years of supporting this stuff. These are things that we wish we would have had 10 years ago. So when a customer calls up and says, it's just not working for me, they can save their logs and share it up to us really easy, send it via email. Those types of creature comforts are really important to keeping people working rather than troubleshooting stuff. So that's been really helpful. So I'll go back in here. So you will see that, the ability here to share up in the top right. I can take somebody basically to the exact screen that I'm on, what it is that I'm looking at, and share it to them directly so that, if I want to hand off a work order or I want somebody to collaborate with me on a work order, they'll be able to jump in and pick it up without having to do a whole bunch of searching and finding and all that. One of the, I guess, as we go through, we've got timers here that are available. I can start a timer when I'm in a work order. So you can see now I've got the little plus. I can run that right from there. I'll just start that and keep that running as we go. In the work order itself, information about the work order, I can change the status. I can move it just to only to valid available status values there. If there are attached documents, those show up there. If there's any meters, this particular asset doesn't have any meters, so I'll show that somewhere else. Inspections, I can actually add an inspection right here. This is a big step forward for us. You'll see these steppers throughout the solution. They really make it easier to work through multi-step processes rather than asking the user to just remember to do it in the right order. And so as they work through that, it'll be easier. You'll see the same thing for issuing materials, for counts, for transfers, those types of things. Those steppers factor in. We did work with a very innovative and very promising usability consultancy firm on this to help reshape what Mobile Informer looks like. I mean, there's only so many ways you present something like a work order, but a lot of the little accents of color and things like that that make this easier to understand what you're looking at have been brought to us through working with usability experts who are focused on modern design. In the bottom right here, you see that there's the ability to create a service request or a quick report work order. That button is context sensitive, so as you work through different parts of the applications, you'll see different things available to you there. If there was let me find a better one with the job plan. I'm doing a real good job of not finding any, aren't I? There we go. So if there's a job plan associated with it, that shows up here. We've got some changes coming to how this works. This is basically a lift and shift from the existing Informer. Adding labor here works pretty much the same as it used to, but we've got some more options here, and this will be getting some collaboration capabilities here that'll make it easier to add labor for crews and things like that as we go. In terms of materials, if there were any planned materials for this job, they'd show up there. We can see spare parts for the asset here. And then as we start consuming them, they would show up here in the actual. Like I said, this isn't really a full demo. This is a quick walkthrough like they used to do for the networks, previewing their fall season of shows, the lineup. So if you really want to dive in and see how this works, let's set something up as we go. The map view here is intended to be basically a high-level overview of work orders. This is not related to GIS. GIS is separate. That is just using the native map for. Actually, that's the new Flutter map that we're using. Previously, we would have used Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Bing Maps. Now it's shared there. But that will give you, just based on service address, where the work orders are, and you can jump into them from there. If you want GIS, we've got out-of-the-box GIS support with an asterisk to it coming very shortly, so you can feed your base maps and your feature layers and things like that into that and work with them there. One of the things that really sets this apart, and something, as I mentioned, as we were trying to figure out how to serve two masters of reducing the number of clicks and make it easy to get to things, but also keeping everything all in one application, we've developed what I've taken to calling the teleport button. That is up here, and what you can see is it gives me access quickly to what I term adjacent capabilities or adjacent functionality. So within the work management sort of cluster of features, we've got certain things that are going to show up there. But if I need to go to counts or assets or even all the way back out to the homepage, I can do so quickly from there. But I don't have to always go out to get to the next thing that I want to go to. I can jump right over to the thing that I'm most likely to use. Moving forward, one of the major things that we're doing for usability is that list is going to get smart. It's going to understand what it is that you're doing and what it is that you are likely to want to do next based on the way that you use that application. And we're going to be able to provide smart suggestions as we go that are going to be tailored to the way you work. That's a big piece of making this more usable is cutting down the amount of time that you need to spend jumping from thing to thing and just letting you focus on what you do. You'll see in a later slide, we talked about bringing AI into the product because of course we do, because everybody talks about bringing AI into everything. There's a big difference for us between generative AI, server-driven agentic AI, and then usability on the device, benefiting from AI, but not in the same sense. So yes, there's going to be AI in this to varying degrees and in varying fashions. So I'm going to try to keep our marketing team from bragging too much about AI without being very specific about what it is that we're doing with it. But just know that as we go through this, the goal really is to get this to be smarter about how you're using it and make it more usable as a result. In the assets, unfortunately, this demo data has gotten a little bit goofy, but we can see here, looking at asset data, if there's meters, we see those here. I can take a meter reading right from here, and this will give me the information on prior meter readings, but I can also examine the parameters here. I can also take meter readings from within the work orders as well. If the device has meters, they would show up there, and I can take them as part of the work order. So part of the reason that we found our way into this architecture was that, as you probably know, with Maximo or Maz, there's a lot of different ways to get to the same thing, and we need to respect that. And we started to see a lot of overlap. So that's a very conscious decision to give people the entryways that they're accustomed to, but to basically reach back to the same core functionality in the product, so it becomes simpler to maintain and simpler to enhance.
Excuse me, Aaron.
Yeah.
Just giving you a time check. You've got 4 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, we also have inventory counts and within inventory issues and returns, transfers, etc. Like I said, this was not intended to be a full display of the product, but hopefully you see where we're going, where we are, and it's interesting to you. If it is, but again, reach out. We'd love to set up demos. I don't know, Scott, I haven't been able to keep an eye on it. Have there been any questions that have popped up?
I see no questions. However, we just got 2 in the chat. The first question is, what is the Informer version for UX Suite?
It's 6 and later, I believe.
Okay. And the second question is, when will the new application be available for testing? Is the way so we can translate it the same as it was with previous versions?
I bet I can guess who asked that. Yes, it is. The applications themselves are available in their respective app stores. So you can download, if you search UX Suite, you'll see it in Windows, in the Google Play and iOS App Store. Depending on, reach out to us. We can potentially provide you with credentials to work in our sandbox. If you want to deploy it in your own environment as a test, depending on if you're an existing customer with licenses or a prospective customer who would need to be set up with licenses, we can set up what we call a proof of technology and provide you with the installers and the guidance to get that up and running in very short order. But depending on, there's a lot of specifics to what path we take for whoever that is. But as far as translation, yes, the translations are being managed in effectively the same manner as previously. So this will support multilingual with a prioritization of the device configuration. So if you've got multiple languages on there and one of those languages is the one that's the base language of the device, it should pick that up and display it there. And we do have customers, of course, that have several languages, and that's basically managed via resource file. We can get into the technical specifics of that. If that's who I think it was, I'll give you a call. Well, this is where I'll be honest and say, in a one-on-one demo, I can talk a lot more about what our roadmap looks like, particularly as it may intersect with what it is that you are hoping to get out of the product. But in a forum like this, I want to keep some things a little close to the vest. So, yeah, if you've got specific questions, reach out. As I said, we've just launched this last month, so we're still getting the word out. This is new and exciting for us, and we're really eager to get this in the hands of as many people as we can, to have them bang on it and tell us what they like, what they don't like. Hopefully there's a good chance to talk through this. And if you saw something you liked, if you didn't see something you expected to see and you'd like to ask about it, get in touch.
There is one more question, Aaron.
Okay.
Question from Holly Paris. Hi, Holly. Does it show if asset is down?
Yeah, yes, it will. You mean on the work order or on the asset? I can kind of show if this still, you're still seeing my tablet, right? Yeah. It will show as the status here. You see status operating, and I can put it into a different status depending on what the asset is. The asset.
I think she says both.
Okay, yeah, it'll take you to the same place. Again, that's one of those places where the overlap, there may be multiple entry points, but they take you to the same place, the same capability. So you'll be able to see it from either. But you can see here, you can just change it, and then it would indicate, inactive. Now I've just changed it if that's my screen caught up. So I think we're officially out of time. Any other questions?
We are out of time. I'm checking again. There are no open questions. One last check. There are no hands up. Aaron, thank you so much. This was extremely informative. And to everyone, to reiterate what Aaron said, if you're looking for some additional information that you wanted to ask privately, feel free to reach out. And as I indicated, we will send out the recording of this session, and will be available for any sort of questions that you might have. We will be at IMC, so if someone's going to IMC, we will do so. Aaron, you have one question. Feel free to drop at this point, but one question is the asset status condition change managed through security groups?
Meaning, does it limit who could make that change? My take on that question would be if it's respecting people with the right to do that, and the answer is yes. If I've misunderstood the question, please let me know. But everything that we do in Informer gets processed by Maximo. Yeah. And everything that gets processed by Maximo is subject to all the business rules accordingly. So we do not create an opportunity for people to go outside of what they're supposed to be doing. Hopefully that helps.
Yep, it indicates that that was answered. So again, thank you very much. Hope you have a good rest of your day. And thanks again for attending this webinar series. We will be having 2 more webinars. Next week, we will be doing a webinar on APM. Joe Mendoza will be giving that webinar. And then we will be doing a webinar on the 18th, talking about same sort of considerations and things that you might want to think of if you want to take your Maximo or MAV environment to the cloud. So thank you again very much. Thank you, Aaron, very, very much. And everyone have a good day. The call is going to be closed now.